Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Ever since the attack against Donald Trump in July, there have been prominent names that have simply dropped the act and put their weight behind him. But could Charlemagne the God be one of them? Well, Elon Musk's first long-form online conversation with Donald Trump last week seems to have made him realize one thing: they're at least talking about the real issues. But while this observation alone may not be enough to flick the switch, it goes a lot deeper to reveal some truth about our contemporary politics, and that I need to tell you about this, so subscribe to the channel and watch what Charlemagne said before we get into it.
I didn't think it was a snooze fest at all. Like I listened to I only listened to about 30 minutes of the conversation. And in those 30 minutes, I heard them talk about the border extensively.
Yep.
And I heard them talk about the economy extensively. And that is why Trump resonates with so many people, because he's speaking to the issues. And those are the two major issues. Folks don't care about all that other stuff as long as what they care about is being addressed. People want to know how they're going to have more money in their pocket and how they're going to feel safe.
Well, that's what his base cares about, right?
That's what everybody cares about. When you're having a conversation, you're talking about light bills being lower, and you're talking about,
border
groceries being lower,
having
and
jobs.
Border control. That's what everybody cares about. That's not just his base.
You said he wasn't a snooze fest. You only listened for 30 minutes. They would listen for 2 hours.
No, I ain't said the whole. I fell asleep.
I
fell asleep. I woke up and I was like, "Whoa, it's 3 o'clock in the morning."
And I'll tell you one thing that woke me up, because that's why I said it wasn't a snooze fest at all.
Not so much Trump, because he definitely talks.
Oh, he talked the whole time.
But exactly.
Yeah.
But Musk didn't ask the question. He seemed more of a fan than somebody.
There was one thing Trump said. It was something to the effect of, "It's not global warming that's going to take us out. It's nuclear warming." And then Trump started having a convo about how all these countries have nuclear weapons and the threat of nuclear war is high.
At that, Elon was so confused at that when he was doing that. But
what is there to be confused about?
Because he didn't start off the conversation talking about that. Trump took it there.
Oh yeah, they were talking about global warming.
Yeah. He wasn't confused, like he didn't understand it. It was just like, that's not where. But Trump, he was controlling the conversation.
Well, what Trump said, he said global warming isn't going to take us out. Nuclear warming will. The fact that these conversations about nuclear war have been happening so frequently and so casually should scare us all.
Honestly, this is a rare confession from someone like Charlemagne. For the last 8 years since Donald Trump rose to the scene, has hardly ever noticed a redeeming quality about him. But in the world we live in, and as chaotic as it is, he's completely right about this time. Polls and surveys have consistently shown that Americans are crying out for their leaders to ask the right questions and take the right action on the two of the most pressing issues, inflation and immigration. And that's not even new, because if you look at the surveys from Gallup and Pew Research over the last decade, these two issues have been consistently at the top of the list. It just so happens that with each passing year, it's becoming harder and harder to not notice them, as inflation squeezes the budgets for the average American and they feel less safe on their streets than they ever have. That's a level of analysis where you don't even need to be politically partisan to understand, and for some reason, even Joe Biden dropping out and Kamala Harris taking the mantle has not helped the Democrats in that regard. That's because apart from her usual verbal vagueness when it comes to important issues, she's not even sat down for a long-form interview since becoming the presumptive Democratic nominee. And that says a lot, because it's that lack of communication at such a volatile time, both internally and externally, that is driving a lot of traffic to Donald Trump when speaking to Elon Musk for nearly 2 hours on some of the most important issues that plague this country. Just a flavor of that, here's the segment of that conversation that appealed to Charlemagne, where he spoke about the greatest threat being nuclear warming rather than global warming.
People talk about global warming or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me, that's an immediate problem, because you have, as I said, 5 countries where you have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president, because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number 1, and we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that, you're not surprised to hear, very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even surpassing. But to me, the biggest problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's, a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. And when I talk about I'll prevent World War III, I will. But the truth is that you have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Truth is, if Trump can win the eyes and ears of Democratic voters, there's no one to say that he won't eventually win their minds, and that's a massive vacuum that the Harris-Walz ticket is left open. With just over 70 days for the election, here's a peek into the non-seriousness that exudes from the Kamala Harris campaign. They put out this post on X apparently insisting on calling it Twitter, and then asking people for $25 to respond to their lies. The post was almost a parody of itself, and the Trump-Musk interview has seen no viable and impressive response, apart from things like this. Meanwhile, what Donald Trump warned about nuclear warming is looking dangerously close. That's because there has been news that Vladimir Putin may be conducting tests on using tactical nukes in the Ukraine conflict to end it decisively. If you don't know what they are, tactical nuclear weapons are basically small battlefield bombs that function on nuclear fission, and what's dangerous is not their fallout or damage, but how much they blur the line for how the opponent should respond. Would that be considered a proper nuclear strike and therefore deserve a response in kind? Would conventional militaries be deployed against nuclear assets? No one knows the answer because they blur the lines and almost serve as the first step on the ladder of nuclear escalation. That's how close we are to nuclear warfare, all while the Democratic nominee so far has refused to even commit herself on policy positions on these foreign wars, much less tell voters how she'd make that happen. Apparently right now, Kamala Harris is more interested in playing to America's identity politics in order to secure votes, which is what led to a rather bizarre moment at a rally, where she's being criticized for putting on a fake accent and trying to tailor the message depending on who she's speaking to, without coming across as authentic at all.
And please give it up for Quavo. Win in 2020, and we're gonna do it again in 2024. Yes, we will. So let's get right down.
You can't blame people for being turned off to that now, especially as they face a multitude of problems both in their own lives and internationally. As a country on the world stage, we'll have to see which way America tilts this November, but there is no doubt about a lack of genuine and serious dialogue that's missing between leaders and the public right now in this country.